In today's lesson, we're diving into the essay History Matric 2024, Paper 1, Berlin Wall. And if you're looking for more engaging history content, make sure to check out our Crash Course World History playlist linked below. Now let's get to it. Alright, question no! 1. When did the construction of the Berlin Wall begin?
So here we go.
Question no. 2. Why did the German Democratic Republic or the GDR construct the Berlin Wall? So here's the answer to question no. 2. The German Democratic Republic or GDR constructed the Berlin Wall to prevent the mass exodus of people from the east to west part of Berlin. So many people were leaving east to west Berlin. This was a problem for the GDR because these people who were leaving were often better educated, more skilled workers and professionals, and they were also generally wealthier than those who stayed behind. So the reason why they were going to West Berlin was because of the promise of better economic opportunities and also political freedom. This trend of people leaving the east to go to the west actually threatened the very existence of the socialist state. And that's because it illustrated to the rest of the world that people weren't happy with living under communism. So then when the GDR built the Berlin Wall, they were hoping that this would stop people from leaving and going to West Berlin. And speaking of communism, that takes us to our next question. Question no. 3. What is communism in simple terms? So, here's the answer. In simple terms, communism is an economic and political system where all property is collectively owned rather than privately. So, instead of being owned by individuals or businesses, resources and means of production are controlled by the government, which aims to create a classless society, and to do that by getting rid of private ownership and by ensuring that wealth is shared equally among all members of society. Question no. 4. How did the fleeing of people from east to west Berlin damage the credibility of the GDR? And also, how did it affect the workforce? So here's the answer to that question. Firstly, it damaged the credibility of the GDR because it showed the world that the government was not capable of providing its citizens with the basic rights and freedoms that people in capitalist countries enjoyed. Secondly, it caused damage to the workforce of the GDR because it meant that the country lost some of its most valuable human resources. Again, those being the skilled workers and professionals who went to West Berlin. Question no. 5. Give 2 pieces of evidence that West Berlin was sealed off within a day. Well, here are my 2 pieces of evidence. 2 pieces of evidence that West Berlin was sealed off within a day. Within 1 day, barbed wire fences were erected at all crossing points between East and West Berlin. All forms of public transport across the lines were stopped, and people were forbidden from leaving their own side of the city. Now that's from the textbook. But obviously, if you don't have access to the textbook, you can get this information from other sources. Question number 6. Why was Nofgay in West Berlin before the wall was built? So here's the answer to that. Nofgay was in West Berlin to make arrangements to smuggle his wife and children to the west before the planned restrictions were imposed on travel. Now, that's very important. You need to know that. Question number 7. What does capitalist mean in the context of West Berlin? So, capitalist in the context of West Berlin refers to the economic system that prevailed there. So, West Berlin was a part of West Germany, and therefore it followed capitalism, which was based on private ownership of the means of production and free market economics. In contrast, East Berlin was under the control of the GDR, or the German Democratic Republic, which was a communist state. So, yes, understand that the difference between the 2 Berlins and their different political and economic systems. Question no. 8. What does Nofka's tunnel plan reveal about life in East Berlin? Well, it reveals that life was incredibly difficult under the communist regime. People were desperate for freedom, and they were prepared to take extreme and dangerous measures to escape the oppression of the GDR. So, Nofka's willingness to risk his life by digging a tunnel under the Berlin Wall shows that he and many others were just not prepared to live under communism anymore. They wanted to be free. Question number 9. What was the message of the sign defectors welcome in the West? So here's the answer. The message of the sign defectors welcome in the West was that West Berlin and West Germany were open to people who wanted to escape communist oppression in East Germany. So it was basically telling people that they could come over to the West and they would be welcomed there. This was a direct challenge to the authority of the GDR. And finally, question number 10. How were Berliners' lives affected by the construction of the Berlin Wall? Well, here's the answer. The construction of the Berlin Wall had a devastating impact on the lives of Berliners on both sides of the divide. Families were torn apart with loved ones on either side of the wall. Many people lost their jobs because they were no longer able to commute to work across the border. Freedom of movement was severely restricted, and the city of Berlin became a sad symbol of the political, economic, and emotional divisions of the Cold War. So that's it for the Berlin Wall topic. If you want me to complete the same CapCut ready? Questions and answers for any other topics on the essay history curriculum, just let me know in the comments below. And if you found value in our lessons here, please consider supporting us. We really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.